Semsy. Here we go. Story time with Dora. Let's see, what's going on today? Journey to the Center of the Earth, Chapter 10. Oh, I remember now. It hasn't been that long since we were at this one. We're still trying to get into the Needles District Campground. And we do eventually get there. Now, see, we're getting into the national park right there. Okay. All right, so when we left this thing off, the crew, Harry, Professor Hardwick, and the worthy guide, eiderdown hunter Hans, had just stopped for the night at a farmer's house. And we had just met him and his wife and their 19 children. and they were all just kind of hanging out in this little small room, and that's where we're going to pick it up. Both my uncle and myself, however, were very friendly with the whole party. And before we were aware of it, there were 3 or 4 of these little ones on our shoulders, as many on our boxes, and the rest hanging about our legs. Those who could speak kept crying out "Scelvertu" in every possible and impossible key. Those who did not speak only made all the more noise. This concert was interrupted by the announcement of supper. At this moment, our worthy guide, the eiderduck hunter, came in after seeing to the feeding and stabling of the horses, which consisted of letting them loose to browse on the stunted green of the Icelandic prairies. There was little for them to eat, but moss and some very dry and innutritious grass. Next day, they were ready before the door, sometime before we were. "Welcome," said Hans. Then, tranquilly, the air of an automation, without any more expression in one kiss than another, he embraced the host and hostess and their 19 children. This ceremony concluded to the satisfaction of all parties. We all sat down to table. That is, 24 of us, somewhat crowded. Those who were best off had only 2 juveniles on their knees. As soon, however, as the inevitable soup was placed on the table, the natural taciturnity, common even to Icelandic babies, prevailed over all else. Our host filled our plates with a portion of lichen soup of Iceland moss, and by no means disagreeable flavor, and an enormous lump of fish floating in sour butter. Ew. After that, there came some skyer, a kind of curds and whey, served with biscuits and juniper berry sauce. To drink, we had blanda, skimmed milk with water. I was hungry, so hungry, that by way of dessert I finished up with a basin of thick oaten porridge. As soon as the meal was over, the children disappeared, whilst the grown people sat around the fireplace, in which was placed turf, heather, cow dung, and dried fish bones. As soon as everybody was sufficiently warm, a general dispersion took place, all retiring to their respective couches. Our hostess offered to pull off our stockings and trousers, according to the custom of the country, but as we graciously declined to be so honored, she left us to our bed of dry fodder. Next day, at 5 in the morning, we took our leave of these hospitable peasants. My uncle had great difficulty in making them accept a sufficient and proper remuneration. Hans then gave the signal to start. We had scarcely got 100 yards from Gardar when the character of the country changed. The soil began to be marshy and boggy, and less favorable to progress. To the right, the range of mountains was prolonged indefinitely like a great system of natural fortifications, of which we skirted the glacis. We met with numerous streams and rivulets, which it was necessary to ford, and that without wetting our baggage. As we advanced, the deserted appearance increased, and yet now and then we could see human shadows flitting in the distance, when a sudden turn of the track brought us within easy reach of one of these specters. I felt a sudden impulse of disgust at the sight of a swollen head with shining skin, utterly without hair, and whose repulsive and revolting wounds could be seen through his rags. The unhappy wretches never came forward to beg. On the contrary, they ran away. Not so quick, however, but that Hans was able to salute them with the universal skelvertu, spetalisk, he said. "A leper!" exclaimed my uncle. The very sound of such a word caused a feeling of repulsion. The horrible affection known as leprosy, which had almost vanished before the efforts of modern science, is common in Iceland. It is not contagious, but hereditary, so that marriage is strictly prohibited to these unfortunate creatures. Yeah, I don't know if that's right or not. I'll have to look that one up. Anyway, let's take a peekaboo at this campground area. I see we made it into the actual area there, and yeah, we just cruising on in here. And oh boy, it's pretty nice. I'm pretty early. Oh yeah. Okay, let's just continue on here. We're doing all right. I think I turned her right when I shouldn't. Let's take a look and see what it says here. Oh yeah, campground's this way over here, and then I go into the wrong loop. I go into the busy loop that is very close, so I end up in the other one. Okay, a leper. Whoa, unfortunate creatures. These poor lepers did not tend to enliven our journey, the scene of which was inexpressibly sad and lonely. The very last tufts of grassy vegetation appeared to die at our feet. Not a tree was to be seen, except a few stunted willows about as big as blackberry bushes. Now and then we watched a falcon soaring in the gray and misty air, taking his flight toward warmer and sunnier regions. I could not help feeling a sense of melancholy came over me. I sighed for my own native land and wished to be back with Gretchen. We were compelled to cross several little fjords, and at last came to a real gulf. The tide was at its height, and we were able to go over at once and reach the hamlet of Aftanes about a mile further. That evening, after fording the Alpha and the Hetta, two rivers rich in trout and pike, we were compelled to pass the night in a deserted house, worthy of being haunted by all the fays of Scandinavian mythology. The King of Cold had taken up his residence there and made us feel his presence all night. The following day was remarkable by its lack of any particular incidents. Always the same damp and swampy soil, the same dreary uniformity, the same and monotonous aspect of scenery. In the evening, having accomplished the half of our projected journey, we slept at the Annexia of Bolt, something like that. For a whole mile, we had under our feet nothing but lava. Wait a second. Might have had 2 pages stick together. No, that ain't right. No. Yes, no. Still good to go. Oh, boy. Yeah, we closing in on my campground now. It's like, oh, yeah, okay, I'll go over here. It's probably better anyway. This disposition of the soil is called Huron. Hraun. Probably not supposed to say one of those, probably the H. The crumbled lava on the surface was in some instances like ship cables stretched out horizontally, in others coiled up in heaps. An immense field of lava came from the neighboring mountains, all extinct volcanoes, but whose remains showed what once they had been. Here and there could have made out the steam from hot water springs. There was no time, however, for us to take more than a cursory view of these phenomena. We had to go forward with what speed we might. Soon the soft and swampy soil again appeared under our feet of our horses, while at every 100 yards we came upon one or more small lakes. Our journey was not in a westerly direction. We had, in fact, swept round the great bay of Foxa, and the twin white summits of Sneffels rose to the clouds at a distance of less than 5 miles. The horses now advanced rapidly. The incidents and difficulties of the soil no longer checked them. I confess that fatigue began to tell severely upon me, but my uncle was as firm and as hard as he had been on the first day. I could not help admiring both the excellent professor and the worthy guide, for they appeared to regard this rugged expedition as a mere walk. On Saturday, June 20th, at 6 o'clock in the evening, we reached Boudire, a small town picturesquely situated on the shores of the ocean, and here the guide asked for his money. My uncle settled with him immediately. It was now the family of Hans himself, that is to say, his uncles, his cousins German, who offered us hospitality. We were exceedingly well received, and without taking too much advantage of the goodness of these worthy people, I should have liked very much to have rested with them after the fatigues of the journey. But my uncle, who did not require rest, had no idea of anything of the kind. And despite the fact that next day was Sunday, I was compelled once more to mount my steed. The soil was again affected by the neighborhood of the mountains, whose granite peered out of the ground like tops of an old oak. We were skirting the enormous base of the mighty volcano. My uncle never took his eyes off from it. He could not keep from gesticulating and looking at it with a kind of sullen defiance, as much as to say, "This is the giant I have made up my mind to conquer." After 4 hours of steady traveling, the horses stopped of themselves before the door, and the prebeistery of Stappy. Anyway, that's the end of chapter 10, just like that, and I know we's at the spot. I know we got here, and we're going to get out, and we're going to wiggle around a little bit and try to figure out, maybe if I back in here, I can get the scooter off. So I end up doing that. So maybe we should just do a little bit of a preview here of chapter 11. Chapter 11, we reach Mount Sneffels, the Riker, maybe. Riker, that sounds better. Stappy is a town consisting of 30 huts built on a large plain of lava, exposed to the rays of the sun reflected from the volcano. It stretches its humble tenements along the end of the little fjord, surrounded by a basaltic wall of the most singular character. Basalt is a brown rock of igneous origin. It assumes regular forms which astonish by their singular appearance. Here we found nature proceeding geometrically, and it working quite after a human fashion, as if she had employed the plummet line, the compass, and the rule. If elsewhere she produces grand artistic efforts by piling up huge masses without order or connection, if elsewhere we see truncated cones, imperfect pyramids with an old succession of lines, here, as if wishing to give a lesson in regularity and proceeding with the architects of the early ages, she has erected a severe order of architecture, which neither the splendors of Babylon nor the marvels of Greece ever surpassed. I had often heard of the Giant's Causeway in Ireland, the Grotto of Fingal in one of the Hebrides, but the grand spectacle of a real basaltic formation had never come before my eyes. This at Stappy gave us an idea of one in all its wonderful beauty and grace. The wall of the fjord, like nearly the whole of the peninsula, consisted of a series of vertical columns in height about 30 feet. These upright pillars of stone of the finest proportions supported an archivolt of horizontal columns which formed a kind of half-vaulted roof above the sea. Whew. All right, let's call it quits right there. We'll put a pin in it right there. And we's at the campsite. We's all parked up. And we're going to get level, probably. Thank you so much for coming along, and we'll get a little further next time. Sam C. And we'll leave you with just a small tidbit of Rosie to keep you on a level keel. Ha ha.